Well, thanks for staying with us here on Morning Live. Getting back to this very important story, stats that were released yesterday and painting a concerning picture that almost a quarter of South Africa's households at 22.2% actually consider their access to food as inadequate or severely inadequate. And that number is 4 percentage points higher than it was in 2019, which was, of course, before the outbreak of COVID-19. And this is according to the findings of Statistics South Africa's General Household Survey for 2024 that was released yesterday. The data also indicate that between 2003 and 2024, the percentage of individuals who benefited from social grants increased from 12.8% to 40%. And the survey was conducted from more than 20,000 households between January and December of 2024. And to help us discuss this further, we joined virtually now by Solly Molayi, who is the Statistics South Africa's Acting Deputy Director General. Mr. Molayi, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Yes, good morning and good morning to the viewers.
So, Mr. Molayi, in the last 23 years, what we've seen in the survey being released, does this year's survey indicate a decline in the state of our country's service delivery and social development? Yeah, how do we view these stats?
Thank you so much, Sakina. So if you look at the numbers that we have released yesterday from the General Household Survey, I think one can summarize it in two ways. One, if you look at education, the number of South Africans who actually have no education have dropped over the past 23 years. And that is also a good thing because it means that we are now getting a nation that is now getting more education. We are seeing now from the numbers that those who are now having a matric and also post-matric, that number also is increasing. The only challenge, Sakina, that we're seeing is that the numbers are not translated into when you look at now your universities and also your TVET colleges. That's where we are still having a struggle in terms of moving more of South Africans moving into that direction. And the reason being is because of the salaries. And I think the cost, in fact, of getting into the universities. You've mentioned already in the introduction, the issues around the salaries. If you look at the households in terms of the main source of household, the salaries are dropping over time. And we're starting to see more households are relying on the social grant. And the social grant, when you look at it between 2020 and now in 2025, you see that there's a number of individuals who are now getting SRDs. And that is the reason why you're seeing that in South Africa, almost 50% of the household are now relying on social grant as their safety nets to make the mains ends. That on its own, when you're overlaying it with vulnerability to hunger, I think you spoke about the insecurity, about food insecurity in the household. We are starting to see that most of the household are even indicating that they are vulnerable to hunger. So that is one of the challenges that we are seeing from the service. When you look at the service delivery, electricity connecting to the main electricity, we are moving towards the 90%, which is a good thing for the country. The challenge is provinces like your Western Cape and Gauteng, where the number of informal settlement that are mushrooming in different areas, they are now reducing the proportions of households who've got access to electricity. And then I think the challenges that we're having now, it's also water.
And it is, of course, a very worrying picture, the fact that we have more and more South Africans and entire households dependent on social grants from government. Juxtapose that to the picture that you painted of more and more South Africans actually receiving formal education and tertiary level education at that. But in terms of unemployment and poverty as contributors to this particular picture, are there any specific instances where, you know, the picture can be further extrapolated, just to explain better for us, Mr. Molayi, what is going on? Because if you're looking at how the beneficiaries increased over the years, the Eastern Cape recording 54.2%, Limpopo 51.5%, and the least is in the Western Cape with 25%, Gauteng sitting at 26.9%. very worrying statistics because they are still very high.
Yes, indeed, Sakina. So let's look at it this way. The previous weeks or so, the SG presented the quarterly labor force survey, which looked at how many people are working in South Africa and how many people are not working. Again, in that report, Sakina, we've mentioned that the youth are vulnerable to unemployment. Basically, what we mean is that we've got more youth who are not working. And take that conversation and overlay it with how the economy is growing. The economy is growing by less than 1%. So our economy is not growing in the pace that I think all of us, we can agree that we wanted it to grow. We needed to make sure that the economy grows. Our population is a youthful population. And if majority of youth are not in employment, I think that's where also a challenge is. If you break down the number of individuals who are getting access to grant and you look at the age cohort between 18 and 24, before 2019, when you look at that age cohort, the proportion of those who were receiving a grant, it was low. It was even less than 4%. Now we are sitting around 25 to 26% of individuals between 18 and 24, which means that these individuals are not in education. They are not in also employment. And I think that is also one of our challenges that we're having. The previous report that we released around poverty, Sakina, it was quite clear that poverty in South Africa is driven by two things. One, it's unemployment. Two is the level of education that one has. Because having an education, your chances of you getting an employment in South Africa is quite high. And we have seen even with the numbers that we've released that if you look at our graduates, the number of graduates in terms of the employment rate, unemployment rate, it's lower compared to those who only got matric. And I think, Sakina, that's where is our challenge. We need to grow our economy so that our youth can get absorbed.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Solly Molayi, so much more to talk about, and I'm going to pick up on this conversation with you later. But for now, we have to leave it there. Solly Molayi is Statistics South Africa's Acting Deputy Director General, responsible for population and social statistics, talking to us about the General Household Survey results for 2024 that was released yesterday, and what a picture that paints.